in the vast emptiness of space where silence reigns supreme, and the stars twinkle like distant memories, there exists a region so dark, so incomprehensible, that even the most brilliant minds of Earth shudder at its mention. Black holes have always captivated humanity's imagination. They are the cosmic enigmas, the abyss of time and space. But what if these harbingers of doom could communicate? It was a chilly autumn evening in Houston, Texas. The sky was a deep indigo, punctuated by a scattering of stars that twinkled like diamonds set against velvet. Inside the Johnson Space Center, the hum of machinery was accompanied by the low buzz of conversation. Scientists and engineers were buzzing with excitement, preparing for the upcoming launch of the Artemis II mission. Among them was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a renowned astrophysicist known for her groundbreaking research on black holes. Sarah had always been fascinated by the cosmos, drawn to its mysteries since childhood. She often gazed at the night sky, wondering what lay beyond the stars. As she moved through the crowded lab, her mind drifted to her latest project, a series of deep space observations aimed at understanding the behavior of black holes. Little did she know, the universe was about to throw her a curveball that would test the limits of her understanding. "Dr. Mitchell, you might want to take a look at this," called out Ben, a young technician, breaking Sarah's reverie. His voice trembled with excitement, and when she turned to face him, she noticed the flicker of anxiety in his eyes. "What is it, Ben?" Sarah asked, her curiosity piqued. "It's the new data feed from the deep space probes. We're picking up something strange from the vicinity of Cygnus X-1, he replied, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It's a signal, but it's unusual." "Unusual how?" Sarah pressed, her heart quickening. "Here, look." Ben gestured towards the screen, and Sarah leaned closer, squinting at the data. Waveforms danced erratically, an inexplicable pattern emerging from the noise. It was like a heartbeat, a rhythmic pulse that ebbed and flowed, with sporadic bursts that sent chills down her spine. "What is that?" Sarah murmured, her breath hitching in her throat. "Can you isolate it?" "I'm trying. It's not just noise, it's structured, but it's coming from a black hole, Dr. Mitchell. That shouldn't be possible." The implications settled over her like a cold shroud. Black holes were known for consuming everything, including light, rendering them deafeningly silent. Yet here was a signal, a distress call from the very heart of darkness. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. "Get the entire team. We need to analyze this immediately," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tremor of dread coiling in her stomach. As the team assembled, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Was this a natural phenomenon, or was it something far more sinister? She couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at the precipice of a discovery that could change everything they knew about the universe and humanity's place in it. Hours turned into days as the team worked tirelessly, fueled by adrenaline and caffeine. Sarah coordinated with astrophysicists, engineers, and data analysts, their collective minds focused on deciphering the cryptic signal. The sound waves were analysed, broken down into spectrograms that revealed a series of complex patterns. Each transmission seemed to tell a story, but the language was alien. "We've ruled out any known natural phenomena," said Dr. Lewis Young, the lead astrophysicist, his brow furrowed in concentration. "The frequency modulation and amplitude variations indicate intentionality. It's as if something or someone is trying to communicate." The room fell silent, the weight of Lewis's words settling over them. What kind of intelligence would send a message from a black hole? And why? "We need to send a response," Sarah stated, her voice firm. "If this is a distress signal, we can't ignore it." "But what do we say?" Ben interjected, his tone skeptical. "It's not like we can just shout into the void and hope for the best." "We could transmit a series of prime numbers," Lewis suggested, referencing the mathematical sequence often used in attempts to communicate with extraterrestrial life. It's a universal language. Let's do it, Sarah decided. Prepare the transmission for Cygnus X-1. We need to establish a two-way communication line. As the team worked to formulate their response, an unsettling sense of dread filled the air. Each keystroke echoed ominously in the quiet lab, as if the universe itself held its breath in anticipation. What if they were about to unleash something far beyond their comprehension? Days turned into weeks, and the world outside continued its mundane existence while inside the Johnson Space Center, time warped under the weight of their endeavor. Finally, the moment arrived. They were ready to send their message into the void. The tension in the room was palpable as Sarah stood before the control panel, her heart racing. "Transmit on my mark," she instructed, her voice steady, despite the turmoil within. 3, 2, 1, transmit. The signal shot into the depths of space, a beacon of hope cast towards the inky abyss. They waited, breath held, for a response. Hours turned to days again, and the team continued to monitor the signals from Cygnus X-1. Sarah found herself caught between hope and dread, imagining the possibilities that lay hidden within the swirling darkness. But the days wore on, and the silence grew heavier, an oppressive weight that threatened to suffocate them. Then, just as despair began to creep in, the monitors lit up. The lab erupted into a cacophony of noise, alarms blaring as data flooded in. "Dr. Mitchell, we're receiving a response," Ben shouted, his voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Put it on screen," she commanded, her heart racing as the spectrograms appeared before her eyes. This time the patterns were different, more frantic, more chaotic. "It's changing," Lewis said, his eyes wide. "It's almost like it's escalating. The frequency is shifting." Sarah's stomach dropped as the realization struck her. It's not just a response, it's a warning. The data continued to pour in, and as the team worked to decode the latest transmissions, an overwhelming sense of dread settled over Sarah. The patterns were no longer mathematical or structured. They were erratic, filled with emotion, fear, desperation, and a haunting sorrow that echoed through the lab. "What are we dealing with?" Ben asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as he stared at the screen, transfixed. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, feeling a chill race down her spine, "but we need to figure this out before it's too late." Days passed as they struggled to make sense of the transmission. The once structured signal had devolved into a cacophony of distress calls, punctuated by distorted sounds that resembled screams. Then, one late evening, as shadows crept across the lab, Sarah received an urgent message from a colleague at a satellite facility in California. "Dr. Mitchell, you need to see this. We've detected a gravitational anomaly near the black hole. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered." Sarah's heart raced as she and her team rushed to the screen. The readings were alarming, unprecedented spikes in gravitational waves suggesting something was emerging from the black hole. "Could it be a stellar object?" Lewis suggested, his voice tense. "It shouldn't be possible for anything to escape a black hole," Sarah replied, her brow furrowed. "But if it's emitting these signals, then it's possible something is trying to break free." The implications were terrifying. What kind of entity could survive the crushing forces of a black hole? And why would it be trying to communicate? As the team struggled to comprehend the reality of their findings, the monitors lit up once again, displaying an image that sent a wave of horror rippling through the room, a distorted shape emerging from the darkness, pulsing with an otherworldly light. "Is that—" Ben began, his voice trailing off as the figure twisted and writhed on the screen, a nightmarish apparition defying the laws of physics. "Yes," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. "But what is it?" The entity continued to shift on the screen, its form an amalgamation of swirling shadows and pulsating light. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a manifestation of pure chaos and despair. "What are we looking at?" Ben asked, his voice shaky as he leaned closer to the monitor. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her mind racing. "But if this is the source of the distress signal, we need to understand what it wants." The entity pulsed in response, its rhythm synchronizing with the transmission they had been decoding. It was as if it were alive, a consciousness trapped in a realm beyond comprehension. "We've got to send another message," Lewis urged, urgency lacing his words. "We need to know what it is." With a heavy heart, Sarah nodded. "Let's do it." The team formulated a new message, a simple inquiry. "What are you?" As the transmission went out, Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What if the entity was malevolent? What if it held secrets that humanity wasn't ready to confront? Then, moments later, the screen flickered, and a new wave of data flooded in. This time clearer, sharper, revealing symbols that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. "What is this?" Sarah gasped, staring at the unfamiliar glyphs that filled the screen. They were intricate, alien symbols that danced across the display, vibrating with a strange resonance. "It looks like a language," Lewis said, excitement mingling with fear. "But it's unlike anything we've ever encountered." As they began to analyze the symbols, it became clear that the entity was attempting to convey a message, a desperate plea for help, a warning of impending doom. The team worked tirelessly, each member driven by a mix of curiosity and dread, knowing that the fate of the world could hinge on their understanding of this cosmic call. But the deeper they delved into the entity's message, the more horrified they became. "Listen to this," Ben said, his voice barely audible, as he deciphered one of the symbols. "It's talking about a cycle of consumption and rebirth." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, her heart racing as she leaned closer. "It describes how civilizations have been drawn to the black hole, lured by its power, only to be consumed. And then it describes a transformation, a merging with the darkness." The implications of Ben's discovery sent a wave of cold dread through the room. "It's a warning," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "It's trying to tell us that we're next." As the team continued to unravel the entity's message, the weight of its implications grew heavier. The glyphs began to paint a picture of civilizations lost to the abyss. Their essences transformed into a haunting chorus of despair, a cycle that repeated through the ages, with each new victim adding to the entity's power. "Is it possible that this thing is feeding off the fear of those it has consumed?" Lewis theorized, his eyes wide with both fascination and horror. "It makes sense," Sarah replied, her voice trembling. "But if it can communicate with us, what else can it do?" As the hours turned into days, the lines between reality and madness began to blur. The team was plagued by nightmares, visions of darkness consuming them, whispers echoing in the void. The air in the lab grew thick with dread, and even the brightest minds found themselves ensnared by fear. "We're playing with forces we don't understand," Ben said one evening, his face pale as he stared at the screen. "What if we're not meant to know what this thing is?" "Knowledge has always come with a price," Sarah replied, her voice low. "But we can't turn back now. We need to understand what we're up against." But with each passing hour, the weight of the truth pressed down upon them. They were not just observing a cosmic anomaly. They were engaged in a dangerous dance with a being that thrived on their fear. A creature born from the heart of a black hole. A predator lurking just beyond the veil of existence. As the team continued to decode the entity's message, they uncovered an unsettling truth. The glyph spoke of a choice, a sacrifice that had to be made to appease the darkness, a payment for knowledge that could alter the fate of civilizations. "What does it mean?" Ben asked, his voice barely a whisper as he stared at the screen. "It means we may have to offer something in exchange for our safety," Sarah said, her heart racing. But what could we possibly give that would satisfy something so powerful? What if it wants a soul? Lewis suggested, his voice trembling with fear. What if it needs to consume something of ours? The thought sent chills down Sarah's spine. We can't allow ourselves to be drawn into this. We need to find a way to sever the connection, to warn others. But as they worked, the entity's presence grew stronger. The atmosphere in the lab shifted, thickening with an oppressive energy. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and the whispers grew louder, echoing their fears and doubts. "It's trying to manipulate us," Ben said, his eyes wide with terror. "It's feeding off our fear." "Then we have to confront it," Sarah declared, determination igniting within her. "We can't let it consume us or anyone else." The team steeled themselves for what lay ahead. They formulated a plan to disrupt the connection, to sever their ties to the darkness that threatened to engulf them. But as they prepared to act, they realized that the entity would not let them go easily. With a newfound resolve, the team set their plan into motion, intent on disrupting the connection that had been forged with the entity. They initiated a series of counter-signals, sending waves of energy into the blackness, attempting to sever the ties that bound them. But as they worked, the air in the lab grew electric with tension. The shadows deepened, coiling around them like a suffocating shroud, and the whispers transformed into anguished cries, echoing through the walls of the control room. "Fight it!" Sarah shouted, her voice barely cutting through the cacophony of sound. "We can't let it take us." But as they pressed on, the entity fought back. Monitors flickered and died, alarms blared, and a darkness seeped into their minds, wrapping around their thoughts like tendrils of smoke. "Dr. Mitchell!" Ben cried, his face pale as he struggled to maintain focus. "It's too strong." "I can see it," Sarah said, her heart pounding in her chest. "But we can't give in. We have to stand together." As the team rallied, they formed a circle, holding hands as they focused their energy, channeling their collective will against the encroaching darkness. But just as they thought they might break free, a blinding flash of light erupted from the screens, illuminating the lab in a kaleidoscope of colors. The light enveloped them, blinding in its intensity, and Sarah felt herself being pulled into the maelstrom. It was as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart, and she was caught in the rift, spiraling toward the unknown. "No! Hold on!" she screamed, her voice lost in the chaos. Time stretched and warped as she tumbled through the abyss, glimpses of other worlds flashing past her, civilizations devoured by darkness, their cries echoing in the void. Each face, each soul was a testament to the entity's insatiable hunger, and the realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. They were not the first to face this horror, and they certainly would not be the last. Just as she thought she would be lost forever, Sarah felt a tether pull her back, a familiar presence anchoring her to the present. With sheer force of will, she grasped onto that light, pulling herself away from the abyss. As the blinding light receded, Sarah found herself back in the control room. The team surrounding her, their faces pale but resolute. The darkness that had threatened to consume them began to recede, but the entity's presence lingered, a sinister whisper in the back of their minds. "We need to finish this," she said, her voice steady as she faced the monitors. "We can't let it claim us or anyone else." With renewed determination, they focused their energy on a final counter-signal, channeling everything they had left into one last desperate plea. They would confront the entity, challenge its hold on them, and sever the connection once and for all. "Now!" Sarah shouted, and the room erupted with energy as their combined will surged towards the screen, a wave of defiance crashing against the darkness. But as they initiated the final signal, the entity roared to life, its shape shifting and twisting on the screen, a grotesque manifestation of fury. It surged forward, breaking through the monitors, its tendrils reaching out toward them, a nightmarish embodiment of their fears. In that moment, Sarah understood the truth. To break free, they would have to make a sacrifice. The entity thrived on fear, and they had to confront their deepest terrors to sever its hold. "I'll do it," she said, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'll confront it directly." "Are you crazy?" Ben shouted, panic etched across his face. "You can't just—" "It's the only way," Sarah insisted, her voice resolute. "We have to confront it, together." As her teammates grasped her hands, Sarah felt their collective strength surging through her, a lifeline in the tempest of chaos. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, embracing the darkness. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. In response, the entity twisted and writhed, its form a swirling mass of shadow and light. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, a cacophony of anguished cries that threatened to engulf her. "I know your hunger," Sarah continued, her heart racing as she confronted the entity, "but we will not be your next victims." The entity hesitated, its shape faltering as Sarah pressed on. "You thrive on fear and despair, but we refuse to be consumed. We will not feed your darkness." The air crackled with energy as the entity writhed, its form distorting and collapsing under the weight of her words. "Your power is built on the pain of others," Sarah shouted, her voice resonating with defiance. "But we will stand against you." As her words echoed through the void, the entity's hold weakened. The darkness began to recede, and with one final surge of energy, Sarah unleashed a wave of light, a brilliant beacon that pierced through the shadows. The darkness shattered, erupting in a blinding flash that consumed everything in its wake. Sarah felt herself being pulled back, the light enveloping her as the lab faded away, replaced by a bright expanse of stars. When she opened her eyes, she found herself standing in the control room once more, her team surrounding her, their expressions a mixture of relief and disbelief. The monitors displayed a serene silence, the haunting glyphs gone, replaced by a tranquil darkness. "We did it," Ben whispered, tears of relief streaming down his face. "We really did it." But as they celebrated their victory, Sarah felt an unsettling chill creep up her spine. The universe was vast and unknowable, and while they had faced the darkness and survived, she couldn't shake the feeling that the entity was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next opportunity to strike. Months passed, and life at NASA returned to its usual rhythm. The Artemis coup mission launched successfully, and Sarah continued her research, but the encounter with the entity haunted her. She often found herself gazing at the night sky, wondering about the darkness that lay beyond the stars. The universe was filled with mysteries, and though they had survived, she knew that the echoes of fear would always linger. One evening, as she walked through the observatory, Sarah noticed something strange, a flicker of light on the monitor, a distant signal emanating from Cygnus X-1. Her heart raced as she leaned closer, recognizing the unmistakable pattern of the distress signal they had received long ago. But this time it was different. This time it felt like a call, a haunting whisper that beckoned her back into the abyss. With a mix of fear and determination, Sarah knew that she had to confront the darkness once more. Not just for herself, but for all those who had come before her, and those who would come after. The cycle had not yet been broken, and the truth was far more horrifying than she could have ever imagined. The months following the encounter with the entity had been a surreal blend of relief and dread. Sarah Mitchell resumed her work at NASA, but the memory of the encounter lingered like a shadow, haunting her thoughts. Despite the triumphant success of the Artemis II mission, she felt the gnawing sensation that their victory was not as definitive as she had hoped. The team had briefed higher-ups on their findings, but many in the scientific community remained skeptical, dismissing their experience as a mere anomaly or misinterpretation of data. yet those who had been in the lab that fateful day knew the truth. They had encountered something beyond comprehension, something that resided in the darkness of the universe and thrived on fear. One late evening, Sarah sat alone in her office, surrounded by stacks of research papers and reports. The lab was quiet, the hum of machinery and distant chatter replaced by an unsettling stillness. She'd stared at the star map projected on her computer screen, the shimmering dots representing distant galaxies and black holes. Cygnus X-1 loomed large, a black mark on the canvas of the cosmos. "Why did it come to us?" she whispered to herself, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. What did it want? Just then, the intercom buzzed to life, interrupting her thoughts. "Dr. Mitchell, you have a visitor," came Ben's voice, laced with urgency. "Send them in," she replied, glancing at the clock. It was late, and the presence of anyone else was unexpected. The door creaked open, revealing Dr. Lewis Yang, his face pale and drawn, as if he hadn't slept in days. "Sarah, you need to see this," he said, urgency etched across his features. "It's about the signal from Cygnus X-1. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, rising from her chair. "Is there more data?" "Yes, but it's not just data," Lewis replied, stepping closer and lowering his voice. "I've been monitoring the system since we last communicated with the entity. It's sending something else." "What do you mean? Another signal?" she asked, her heart racing. Lewis nodded, anxiety radiating from him. "It's stronger than before, more coherent. It's almost like it's evolving." A chill crept down Sarah's spine as she followed Lewis to the control room. The monitors blinked to life, displaying a new set of glyphs, this time more intricate and urgent than the previous ones. They pulsed with an otherworldly light, drawing her in like a moth to a flame. "What does it say?" Sarah asked, leaning closer to the screen. "I don't know yet," Lewis replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. "But it feels like it's reaching out. It's trying to establish a new connection." "Why now?" Sarah wondered aloud. "After everything we've been through?" "I have a theory," Lewis said, a mixture of excitement and fear in his voice. "What if the entity wasn't just a single being? What if it's part of a larger network, a collective consciousness that spans the cosmos? This could be a way for it to gather strength, to recruit others into its fold." Sarah's heart raced as the implications settled over her. "You think it's trying to lure us back in? To consume us again?" "I think it's trying to communicate on a different level. But we have to be careful," Lewis warned, his gaze locking with hers. "If we respond again, we might open the door to something even worse." Despite Lewis's warnings, Sarah felt a magnetic pull towards the signals. The cryptic glyphs seemed to resonate with a strange familiarity, a haunting melody that beckoned to her. She couldn't ignore it. The urge to understand outweighed the fear that gripped her heart. "We have to analyze this," Sarah insisted, determination igniting within her. "If this is a new signal, we can't let fear dictate our actions." Lewis hesitated, torn between caution and curiosity. "I'll help you, but we need to be vigilant. Whatever this is, it could be dangerous." As they worked, the hours slipped away, the lab becoming a sanctuary of light amidst the encroaching darkness. The team gathered around the screens, their faces illuminated by the glow of the monitors as they deciphered the glyphs, slowly unraveling the tangled web of meaning. The message began to take shape, a combination of mathematical sequences, intricate symbols, and vivid imagery that depicted the cycle of consumption and rebirth they had encountered before. But now, it was more elaborate, hinting at something vast and ancient. "It talks about a bridge," Lewis said, his voice trembling with excitement. "A bridge between worlds, between our reality and another dimension. It's asking for assistance to maintain this connection." "What kind of assistance?" Sarah asked, frowning. "And at what cost?" As they delved deeper, the glyphs began to morph, shifting, into scenes that depicted civilizations thriving and then falling, devoured by an insatiable void. Each image sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. The entity was not alone. It was part of a greater cosmos, a cycle of creation and destruction that transcended time and space. "Look!" Ben shouted, pointing at the screen. "It's showing us a map, a pathway leading to the heart of the black hole." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The implications were staggering. "Are you suggesting we could enter it?" "I think it's trying to guide us," Lewis replied, a mixture of awe and fear in his voice. "But we have to consider the consequences. We don't know what lies beyond." As the team debated their next steps, the air in the room grew thick with tension. Sarah could feel the weight of the universe pressing down upon them, the darkness outside the lab creeping closer. They stood at the brink of something monumental, a choice that could alter the very fabric of reality. After hours of heated discussion, the team gathered in a circle, each member grappling with the gravity of their situation. They could not ignore the call of the void, but they were acutely aware of the price it might demand. "We can't let fear dictate our actions," Sarah said, her voice steady as she looked at her colleagues. "We need to know the truth, no matter how horrifying it may be." "I agree," Lewis added, glancing at the others. "But if we go forward, we must be prepared for anything. We may be stepping into a trap." The team took a moment to absorb his words, the weight of their decision hanging heavily in the air. "We'll need to prepare," Ben said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We should take every precaution." "Agreed," Sarah replied, her mind racing with possibilities. "We can gather equipment, set up fail-safes. We have to document everything." As the team worked late into the night, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the entity was lurking just beyond the threshold, waiting for them to make their move. Finally, as dawn broke, casting a pale light over the lab, the team completed their preparations. They stood together, staring at the monitor, displaying the pulsating glyphs, a portal to the unknown. "We're ready," Sarah said, her heart pounding in her chest. "Let's do this." With trembling hands, Sarah initiated the transmission, sending their response into the void. The air crackled with energy as the glyphs on the screen pulsed in response, a vibrant dance of light and sound that filled the room. As the data flowed in, a vortex of energy began to form in the center of the room, swirling with an intensity that made their skin tingle. The shadows deepened, coiling around them as they felt the gravitational pull of the black hole intensifying. "Stay together," Sarah shouted, grasping the hands of her colleagues as they stood on the precipice of the unknown. The room began to warp, reality bending around them as they were pulled into the vortex. Sarah's heart raced as they tumbled through the swirling darkness, each second stretching into eternity. The echoes of the entity's cries reverberated in her mind, a haunting melody that resonated with their fears and desires. Suddenly, they were thrust into a new realm, a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes that defied logic. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a cosmic tapestry woven from the threads of existence itself. "What is this place?" Ben gasped, his eyes wide as he took in the surreal landscape. "I think we've crossed the threshold," Lewis replied, awe and terror mingling in his voice. "We're inside the black hole, or at least in a dimension beyond it." As they floated in this strange new reality, Sarah felt a presence enveloping them, a warmth that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was the entity, a being of pure energy that seemed to resonate with their very souls. "We need to communicate with it," Sarah urged, steeling herself as she faced the swirling mass of light. "We need to understand its purpose." The entity shifted and morphed, its form becoming more defined, a swirling amalgamation of shadows and light that seemed to pulse with life. Sarah felt a wave of emotion wash over her, fear, longing, and an overwhelming sense of loss. "Who are you?" she called out, her voice echoing in the void. "What do you want from us?" In response, the entity released a wave of energy that enveloped them, filling their minds with visions. Memories of civilizations lost to the darkness, their cries echoing through time. Sarah felt the weight of their anguish pressing down upon her, a chorus of despair that resonated in her very core. "It's feeding on their fear," Lewis whispered, horror etched across his face. "It thrives on the pain of others." But as the entity's presence enveloped them, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. The memories showed not just destruction but resilience, civilizations that had fought back, seeking to break the cycle of consumption and rebirth. "We have the power to resist," she shouted, her voice strong against the tide of despair. "We can choose to break the cycle." The entity hesitated, its form flickering as it absorbed her words. "To break the cycle," it echoed, a chorus of voices intertwined with her own. "To choose, to transcend." As Sarah spoke, the swirling mass began to change, the darkness receding to reveal shimmering pathways that stretched into infinity. Each path represented a choice, a potential future that could lead to redemption or further despair. "Choose wisely," the entity intoned, its voice reverberating like thunder. "Each path holds consequences beyond your understanding." The weight of their decision pressed upon them, and Sarah turned to her team, their faces reflecting the same mix of fear and determination. "We can't let it consume us. We must confront the darkness within ourselves and emerge stronger." With a shared nod, they reached out toward the paths, their hands entwined as they focused their collective energy. The entity surged around them, its form shifting and swirling as they stood at the crossroads of existence. "Together!" Sarah shouted, and with a powerful surge of will, they stepped forward, embracing the light and the darkness within them. As they crossed the threshold into the light, Sarah felt a surge of energy enveloping them, lifting them higher and higher until they burst through the surface of reality itself. They emerged in a realm of pure light, surrounded by a chorus of voices, souls that had been lost to the abyss, now free from the shackles of despair. "Welcome," they intoned, their voices resonating with warmth and compassion. "You have chosen to break the cycle." "What happens now?" Sarah asked, her heart racing with anticipation. "You will become the guardians of knowledge," the voices replied. "You will carry the light of truth into the darkness, guiding others to resist the pull of the void." As the weight of their choice settled in, Sarah felt a profound sense of purpose. They would not allow the darkness to consume them or anyone else. They would share their knowledge, their experience, and their determination to resist. "Together we can build a new future," Sarah declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "We will shine a light into the darkness and help others find their way." With their newfound purpose resonating within them, Sarah and her team found themselves being pulled back through the swirling energies of the cosmos, returning to the familiar confines of the lab. They landed softly, a rush of air enveloping them as reality reasserted itself. The monitors blinked back to life, displaying a serene darkness, devoid of the previous chaos. It was as if the entity had been appeased, its hunger sated, for now. As they gathered in a circle, the team exchanged looks of awe and disbelief. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the weight of their experience would stay with them forever. "We need to document everything," Ben said, his voice steady. "This is just the beginning. We have to share what we've learned." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with determination. "We will tell the world. We will warn others of the darkness that lurks beyond the stars and empower them to resist." As they began to work, their spirits lifted by a newfound sense of hope. Sarah couldn't help but glance at the monitor, her heart racing. The darkness might be gone for now, but she knew the universe held countless mysteries, and the echoes of fear would always linger in the shadows. but they would be ready. Together they would face whatever came next, guided by the light of their knowledge and the bonds forged in the depths of the void. Years passed, and Sarah became a renowned figure in the scientific community, championing the study of dark matter and the mysteries of the universe. She often found herself reflecting on that fateful day, the decision that had altered the course of her life and the lives of her colleagues. They had forged a path to understanding, a bridge between worlds, but the cosmos was vast, and the darkness would always linger at the edges. One evening, as she gazed at the stars, she felt a familiar pull, a whisper in the void that stirred memories of the entity they had encountered. It was a reminder that the cycle of consumption and rebirth was never truly broken. It merely lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to resurface. With a sense of foreboding, Sarah knew that their journey was far from over. The universe was filled with secrets, and she was determined to uncover them all. Together with her team, she would stand vigilant against the darkness, ready to confront whatever horrors lay ahead.